Hello everyone and welcome to the Block 1 Week 2 homework review video for non-verbal reasoning. There is of course another video that you can watch that will go through the verbal reasoning homework, but this is going to be focusing on our orange non-verbal for Week 2. As always, I like to start with a reminder that of course there is a section of online homework that needs to be done by heading to the CGP online website, and under the quick test section you log in and your username will always be the child's first name, surname and location, all lowercase, all one word, no spaces. So for here the example I have is John Smith Burnham. Obviously Burnham is the location that they go to, and the password for everyone at first will be teachitright24@ with a capital T, and of course you're welcome once you then first log in to change your password. In terms of what it should look like when you click on, in this case we're doing complete the grid, so we should be looking at here, complete the grid, and you see from home through the GL non-verbal reasoning under the quick tests you can find the complete the grid questions and you can give them a go. Other things that are just worth highlighting, I know I only mentioned it last week that the Spansros was that key bit of vocabulary to learn. However, really important please that you still make sure that's in your head, that's learned. I'm sure the teachers will be doing lots of spot tests to make sure these are in, and these are so useful throughout the entirety of the block that just making sure your Spansros is there and understood is really important and really valuable. And again, not just what Spansros stands for, but also which ones stand out, I think is well worth looking at and doing a bit of a recap. So jumping into the main body of the homework, you can see we've got multiple sections here within the CGP reasoning book, and we're going to be starting off with page 24-25, then 36-37, 60-61, 64 and 65, and these are all going to be sort of complete the grid style questions. So let's jump into it now. Looking at the first one, we can see from assessment test 1, it's the first section, complete the grid. There is an example. Again, these complete the grid questions may also be seen and talked about as being matrices questions, just that's worth noting, just in case you ever see matrices questions as well. But it's this classic grid, or either a 2x2 or 3x3 grid, where we're then filling in what we think the missing shape will be. And we'll look at the way we do these is we want to look diagonally, horizontally and vertically and try and spot patterns. And again, that's really important in terms of how you're approaching these, because sometimes the easy things will be spotted in a horizontal, sometimes it'll be easy to spot a pattern vertically, and sometimes, I'll try and highlight these whenever this is the case, it'll be easiest to spot the pattern going from top left to top right, so diagonally, and being able to utilize whichever of those is easiest, whichever view jumps out to first is really important. The other thing that I would highly recommend doing with all of these questions, because there is one correct answer and 4 incorrect answer options, elimination. This is the first time where elimination really features. Last week with the odd one out in the group you couldn't really eliminate as easily, but certainly in these ones, if you ever come across an answer that you know is wrong, cross it out. The reason for that is it then frees up your brain space, it increases your odds of making a correct guess if you can't work out any further, and overall just really increases the odds of you getting a question right. And really, I know it sounds strange by spending time writing things down, but it actually will also speed you up and make it far more likely to get the answer quickly and accurately. So let's start talking through the questions. Looking at the example, we can see here that we've got 2 identical shapes, but they're getting smaller, and the colour seems to be the same as we go in a left to right direction. So I'm expecting as we go in a left to right direction to have an identical shape with identical shading. So that's going to be a small hexagon, and we can see here C is exactly that, a small hexagon. So I think that's almost certainly the answer that I'm going to go with. On to number 1. Looking now this time vertically, I can see that the size and the position is the same. So I can see that I've got my circle and my square. They're both small. They both have the same shading. So I think there's a vertical pattern going on here. So I'm expecting there to be the same position of the shape and the same type of shading, but it has changed from a circle to a square. So I'm expecting this essentially to have turned into a square, which matches up nicely with A. One of the things that you may hear from tutors is to sketch things in. Sketching is a really powerful tool as well. If you sort of sketch predictively what you think it may look like and then try and see which one it matches up with, that can be a really good way of doing it. But again, I would recommend maybe at the start sketching, but as you progress and get better and better, only sketching when you need to. But that's different for each student. Certainly at the start, there's no harm in always doing a little sketch before even looking at the options, just to see how close you can get. Remember, sketching is not about being artistic, it's just about being functional. So yeah, here I've got 3 lines, up here I had 7 lines, that's fine. As long as the lines are in the right sort of direction, that's absolutely okay. You don't have to be a good artist to be a good sketcher. Also, I know I mentioned elimination, but since answer option A matches perfectly, I would stop there. I wouldn't now go through the process of crossing all of these out just because the teacher told me to. elimination should only happen if you consider. And then what's nice about that is what you could do is, let's say you were doing this live and you thought the answer option was A, that you think that's your answer. You go through, you finish all the other questions. A lovely way to check would be to then come back and think, okay, why is it not B? Oh yeah, because the shading's wrong. Why is it not C? Oh yeah, because the outside shape is wrong. Why is it not D? Well, the outside shape and the shading is wrong. Why is it not E? Well, it's in the wrong place, it's too small, so I can cross that one out. And that act of eliminating with intent, so notice how I justified each of the crossings out that I did, is a fantastic way to check if you've got the time left over at the end. And if you do that process of coming up with an answer, and at the end coming back and eliminating with a reason, you're going to be very, very confident then in your answers that they are correct. And also, if you then can't come up with a reason for why to eliminate this one, or you can't come up with a reason why you think this is, that's a good sign that probably a bit more thought is needed, and perhaps a mistake is there or thereabouts that you need to address and need to think about. Right then, on to number 2. So I can see, first, if I've got a diagonal, it looks like where I've got the same shading and the same pattern shape, so I'm expecting there to be a sort of repeating diagonal. So I think down here I'm expecting to have something that matches with this one, where I've got an outside shape that's white and an inside shape that's shaded in grey. So that means I can immediately cross out C and D, and then let's look at the shapes that's going on. Well, it seems to be triangle on the outside, then triangle on the inside. So here, is it going to be a square on the outside, then a square on the inside? And it seems to be then the circle on the inside becomes a circle on the outside, so I think we want to have a triangle on the outside. So again, there's my sketch, and that matches perfectly with B. So at this point I may, as I'm going through, I'm checking, nope, not A, cross it out, yeah, B is my answer, but I would leave E until I've had a chance to think about why it's done, and I may not come back and cross this out until the end, if there's time to check. Well, certainly already, just with my sketching, I know I'm going to have a plus shape, I think, because there's no indication that it's changing, so I can cross out A and C. And then let's work out what's going on. So we've got in the top right and the top right. So immediately I'm expecting a shape to be in the bottom right, which means I can eliminate B and E. So irrelevant of what the shapes are, I think already I've got my answer just by eliminating. Now, in actuality, I can also see that the teardrop is turning into a heart, but do you see, hopefully you can see how just by eliminating based on some observations, I got to my answer without having to completely have solved everything. That's lovely when that happens. Right, on to 4. Well, we've got an upward facing shape that's turning right. So I would guess, for doing my sketch, that I'm expecting something like this, with my upward facing shape turning right. So immediately I can cross out this one, this one, this one, and this one. So there you go. Who knows what's going on with the dots? I am assuming it's just 2, but even without working that out, I was able to get straight to the answer. That again is the power of eliminating. Right, I talked about how sometimes it's much easier to spot the diagonals. What I'm noticing here, these all seem to be the same. These are all the same, so I think these are going to be the same. So I'm expecting to have a grey heart in my shape, and that is absolutely the answer. Now, that's by spotting the diagonals, which is really useful. What I will also just highlight is the other way of thinking about this, that if we wanted to look at a horizontal row, we're going to have one of each every time. So it's going to be heart, star, circle, heart, star, circle. So what's missing from here is, of course, the heart. And equally, if you take it vertically as well, heart, circle, star, heart, circle, star. So again, we're missing the heart. But I do think it's worth spotting those diagonals, because sometimes those can just lead you to an answer even more rapidly without having to worry about what's missing in what direction, by just spotting that diagonal pattern. And again, it doesn't matter which pattern you spot first, and it's just about what's fastest and then what's going to save you the most time, so that hopefully you've got time left over for checking. So again, I am noticing already we've got a pattern going in this direction of similar shapes, so all circles, all triangles, so I'm guessing all squares, so we can cross out everything that's not a square. But I am also noticing that I seem to have sort of a diagonal pattern going on here, where I've got all white, all grey, all white, all grey, so I'm assuming all of these are going to be all black, so my answer needs to be the black square. With number 7, definitely noticing some sort of vertical pattern in the middle there, although is there perhaps something changing with number? Well, this has got a four-sided star and a four-sided star and a four-sided shape, and then we looks like we've got a combination of the two. This is the first one, which I would call an additive pattern, where it looks to me as though it's sort of this plus this equals this. Where I should say this, the star plus the square equals the star with a square in it. We've got a five-sided shape, and a five-sided shape becoming a star inside of a pentagon. So here I think we've got a six-pointed star and our hexagon, and I expect to see them inside of each other, and it looks though as well the shading of the inside shape is becoming the outside. So I think I want a hexagon, if I don't have room, I'm trying to leave a little note for myself with this kind of shading inside, and then a small 6-pointed star inside, and actually that matches up really nicely with E. And again, C was an easy eliminate, B was a fairly easy eliminate because it's got the wrong shading, and then it's just working out what kind of shading you want in the A and D. Obviously, a bit tricky. You had to notice that the shading was swapping places to get those final eliminations done. So, looking at number 8, looks to me as though it's rotating around by 90 degrees. Now, one of the things that obviously I can't do with my piece of paper on the screen, anywhere near as easy as you can do, excuse me, with your book, is you can pick up and rotate your book physically. So one of the things I'd recommend doing, and perhaps I'll try and achieve the same effect with my snipping tool here in a moment. Let me just do it now. Look, so if I take a little cut of this, paste it here, you can take your book physically, and if you think this has been rotated, you can physically rotate your book in front of you and sort of see, does this shape rotated look like this? And yeah, I think it does. We've got that shape, which matches with that shape. So I'm now pretty confident, and I would certainly recommend, especially if you're not too confident to start with rotating, physically, manually rotating the book, rotating the question, so you can see we're rotating by 90 degrees to the right. And I'm assuming then if this one rotates around, it's going to look like the next one. And it does. This now looks like this one. So we've got a pattern of, as we go from left to right, we're rotating 90 degrees each time. Well, that's going to be really useful, because now what I can do is if I focus on this shape here, and I rotate it to the right, I know I want it to have the 2 prongs pointing to the right with the 1 prong pointing to the left, and now I can start eliminating anything that isn't rotated in that direction. So that's wrong, C's got the wrong outright shape, and if I then, all I have to work out is what the difference between the 2 shading is. And this is another good reason that eliminating is so valuable. So already now I know, just by looking at these two, all I have to be paying attention to is the thing that makes these different. And if you look, the difference between A and B is where the white dot is supposed to be. So if I can now try and work out where the white dot is supposed to be, I'm going to get my answer. And looking at this middle column, I can see it's always the center shape that's white, the center shape's at white, so I think I want the center shape to be white, which is why it's B. But again, that's the other power of eliminating. Once you're left with 2 options, just ask yourself, well, what's the difference between my 2 options? And that will really focus your attention with where to look. So very useful. Right guys, we've jumped ahead, so we're now on page 36 for more complete the grid practice questions. And we're going to do the exact same process. I'm going to sort of speed through these. So you see we've got circles, and it looks as though the shading inside is rotating. So I want to have the shading rotate the same way, and that's actually a 45-degree rotation, so I want it to match, and that matches with B perfectly. Looking at D, it seems as though the shape inside is getting pushed to the back, because this is an overlap question, and made larger. So I still want to have a black shield, so that eliminates all of these options, and I want it to be behind, and C obviously is not behind it there. Like I can see the 6-point star sitting behind. It looks to me like I definitely want to have my arrow this way. You'll notice my arrow does not look like their arrows. This is part of what I mean about sketching the answer. I think I want to make it just easy to draw, so I'm not worried about artistic fidelity. I'm just drawing an arrow in the top right-hand corner, pointing to the left, and that's enough to be clear to me so I know what to expect. So good enough is fine, and so that means immediately I can cross out A, I can cross out B because it's too low, I can cross out D because it's pointing in the wrong direction, and I can point out E because it's the wrong direction. So there you go, I didn't have to worry about the outside shape. Just by getting the arrow in the top right hand corner, I was able to work out an answer of C. So now on to 4. Well, I can see another rotation. This is another one where I may want to rotate my book. It is pointing down to start with, then to the right, so I'm now expecting to follow that rotation round to have a shape going up. Let's just see if the same thing happens. Yeah, look, I've got up, then left, then down, and then this is left, then down, then right. So all of these are rotating, this time anti-clockwise by 90 degrees. And again, you could write that down as a note if you wanted to, just remind yourself of why. Won't take too long, so they're all rotating anti-clockwise 90 degrees. So down, left, so the next one's going to be up. So here's my little sketch of up. And now I'm noticing across the row, we've always got a white, a grey, a black, a black, a grey, a white. So I think here we're missing the grey, which is why the option is A. Makes sense to me. Looking at number 5, well, obviously in the vertical columns, all of these are white. So I'm hoping all of these have the same shading. Oh no, annoyingly they don't. Okay, well, that's fine. So all of these, what do they have? Well, we've got a triangle, a circle, and a triangle. I think I've got it. So look, if we look at these two shapes, it seems these are always the same. So triangle, triangle, sort of shield, shield, trapezium, trapezium. So then what's our middle going to be? Is it going to be as easy as that they're all circles? I think probably it is, because there's no indication that it should be the same shape. And just looking at my answer options, I've either got circles or shields. I don't think the shields make sense. However, having an alternating pattern makes sense to me of some shape, circle, then the same shape again. So I think it's going to be a circle. And then what's the shading going to be? Well, there's no clue from the shading on the left. But it looks to me as though we've got 2 vertical shadings here, 2 diagonal shadings here. So I'm going to assume that these two are supposed to be the same diagonal shading. So a circle with diagonal shading is my final answer. And that's in the wrong direction. That has no shading. And D, look, there it is. One thing that sometimes people find hard to spot is the shading, especially when there's a lot of lines. So one thing you can just do is above, do yourself a little sketch of maybe 2 or 3 lines in the same direction. And I don't know why, but some people find that easier to look at and analyse than all of the lines in terms of spotting the difference. It might just be a case of simplifying it. But that's a little tip that I've had that's helped some students if they struggle to work out sort of is this top left, bottom right, or bottom right, top left. It all can be a bit confusing otherwise. Let's look at number 6. So we have got, again, looks to me like there's some diagonal shape going on here, where we've got the diagonal stars, the diagonal shields. So I think here we're expecting some kind of diamond potentially. And then on the internal shapes, we've got triangle, square, pentagon, which is 3, 4, 5. And then this is a 4 and a 6. So I think I'm expecting 4, 5, 6. That would be worth checking. Does this one do 3, 4, 5? Yeah, I think we've got it. So I think I'm expecting a pentagon inside. Since I can't draw that, I might just, again, this is part of the sketching, I might just write a 5. That'll do. Doesn't have to be an actual pentagon that I draw, as long as I know what that means. And now I can compare that to what I'm doing, which in this case B, I think is the diamond with a pentagon inside of it, is my final answer. Number 7. Well, we've obviously got a little bar at the bottom that has shading. It looks as though the shading is swapping around. So I think the first thing I want to have is sort of some black shading to start with, and then sort of an empty box. So how do I draw this? Maybe this is partly where if it's too small to sketch, just feel free to make it bigger. But maybe something like that with some black on the left, and that will do. That's good enough. And then looking at what's going on here, well, it seems as though almost we've got the shape getting, the top half of the shape getting cut off, then rotated round. So I think we need the top half of my triangle cut off pointing down, with kind of the bottom half of the triangle behind it. Not the best picture I've ever drawn, but does that kind of vaguely map? Well, it does kind of vaguely map, actually. So that's not going to be A or C. These two look all right. So what's the difference between those? It's the shading between them. So I think I need to carefully look. So on this one, the shading is going to the left. This one, the shading is going to the right. So it seems to me if this shading is in this direction, it would need to be in this direction, which is not B, but does match nicely with the shading in A. And of course, E would cross out because it's behind. So 7 is the first one of these really where you've got quite a lot going on. You've got to analyse the overlap, the change in shading, as well as the pattern between this sort of little sliding bar clicking between the two. So I like 7. That's quite a good question. That's kind of more like it. There's quite a few things to track, and you've just got to be very methodical of going through and working out what's what. So then 8. I think I'm noticing first off a really nice pattern of diagonal shading. So as I go down here, I'm noticing that all the interior shapes are all white, these interior shapes are all grey, so I'm expecting the interior of these to all be black. So let's cross out B, D, and E. Well, that means I'm now left with 2 options. So let's compare what's different between A and C. The diamonds are the same on both, the cross at the back is the same on both. It's only what type of interior shape it is. Should it be a triangle or should it be a circle? And as I look across the row, I'm seeing triangle, circle, square, triangle, circle, square. So I think every single time needs to have a triangle, circle, square, which means I'm missing a black triangle, which is why my answer option is A for 8. On now then to page 60. So that's a sort of new section. Let's do the same thing. So for this one, it looks quite nice and easy. We've got shading on top, shading on bottom. So I'm expecting to see this, but with the shading on the bottom. And the answer for that is B. So if they are easy questions and you can jump straight to the answer, it is allowed. It's just one of those things where if you wanted to check or if there was time left over, I would now come back and I would maybe do my sketch and see what I think it should look like. And possibly eliminate the ones that don't match, for example. So actually, sorry, this is a good reason to check. option C, because doing my sketch means I've highlighted the wrong ones. There you go, perfect example of why it's a good idea to check, because sorry, it is actually C for this one, and that's because the shading needs to be on the bottom, so it should look the same, but with the shading on the bottom. There you go, real life example of why checking is so valuable. On down to number 2. So again, it looks as though I've got a horizontal line, vertical, so I'm expecting a horizontal line, but the shape is otherwise the same, so I think I'm expecting to have some sort of arrow with a horizontal line going through it, and while not the best sketch, that very definitely marries up with B. And so that's my answer for number 2. For this one, I can see I've got the same outside shape, so I'm expecting to have a triangle. And then there's an inner shape, it looks like it's the same inner shape each time, so I'm expecting to have a circle. But the shading appears, this shading appears to be going vertically. This now shading has moved to the outside, but stayed the same, so still vertical. So that means my outside shading should become the inside. So I think I want a circle with vertical lines in it. And if I go through, that's not got the circle, that's not got the right shading inside. But C, that does have the vertical lines shaded properly. So I think C is my answer. And I've been eliminating as I go through, but now that I've got to C, I found my answer, I'm happy. Only at the end might I come back and eliminate those with a reason if I needed to check. Okay, number 4. This one's going back up to having the 3x3 grids, which is good because a bit more information. Well, there's definitely a rotation, and I think I'm going to sort of zoom in and focus on the black arrowheads and just sort of use those as my arrow just to simplify things. So that arrowhead starts up here and it ends down here. So that, to me, it's definitely a clockwise rotation, but I think it's more than 90 degrees. I think that might be 135 degrees. Now, if you're not sure how I'm working it out, if I compare, like a bit like my compass, if from here to here is 90 degrees, then I'm going sort of halfway down. Well, that's going to be half of 90, which is another 45 degrees. And 90 degrees plus 45 degrees gets me to a 135 degree rotation. So I think that's what we've got here, a 135 degree clockwise rotation, but I will just check it against the next one. So if that's going the same, it should be pointing from here. Another 45 would get it here, and then the 90 would get it around here. And look, that's exactly what happened. It's pointing in that direction. So I think, yeah, I am correct. I really wanted to make sure I could check against here. Look, so there's another 90 plus 45. Yes. Here, there's your 90. There's your 45. Yes. There's your 90 down to 45, and yes, it ends up in that location. So all I've got to do now is go in reverse. So from this one, backwards 90, then backwards 45. I think I'm expecting it to look something like this, where the arrowhead is the black one. So that's not A, that is B. So I'm pretty sure that's the answer, but I could just check. No, C is wrong, D is wrong, and E is wrong. So yeah, B must be my answer. Number 5, it looks as though I've got a quarter of a shape, a half a shape, 3/4 shape, a quarter of a shape, half a shape, 3/4 shape, and it seems as though it's the bottom that stays in that middle part, so I'm expecting to see something like this in the middle. So immediately I can use that to eliminate B and D, and then what colour should it be? Well, it goes white, grey, white, white, grey, white, so yeah, I think we want the grey one, so cross out the 2 that aren't grey, and that means A is my answer for number 5. Number 6, there's a lot going on with these squiggles, but I'm going to try and sort of just zoom in and focus on this little lollipop shape. That lollipop shape is pointing upwards, and then it's pointing to the right, and then it's pointing down. And now if I track the rotation of these arrows, that seems to me like a very nice, friendly 90 degree rotation. Let's check it works the same one here. So if that one's pointing to the left, that one's pointing up, and that one's pointing right. And yeah, that again is a 90 degree rotation. So now I think I can use the same idea and just do my sketch of just the lollipop part. And I'm going to use that one feature to do some eliminating. So A looks maybe okay, but B is not, C is not, D could be okay, but E is not. And now if I just compare, one obvious difference between A and D is that particular lollipop that I focused on supposed to be white or black? Well, let's go back and see. So the lollipop is white, then black, then white. You can see it, I can't quite see it under my scribbles. Let me just move it the other way. But black, white, black. So it seems to be alternating. So I think it should be white, then black, then white. Which means I think A must be the one I eliminate, and D must be my answer. And I haven't really had to consider what's going on with the stars. Again, that's the power of eliminating. Sometimes it lets you find the answer more rapidly without having to necessarily do everything, because if this is the only one that obeys the rules we discovered so far, it must be the answer. Okay, number 7. Looks though the number of rings is consistent, and obviously going from left to right it's all circles, all triangles, and all squares, so I guess we could eliminate all the ones that aren't triangles, so that makes it a bit simpler. And it seems to me the outside ring is black, then the middle ring becomes black, and then the very inner ring becomes black. So it looks like we've got sort of a pattern where they're moving down a level each time. So let's apply that to this one. We've got an outside ring that's white, so it should become a middle ring that's white. Well, D does not have a middle ring that's white, so it's between these two. And I'm just going to focus on, for example, what should the inner colour be? Well, the middle on this one is black, so as it moves one step to the right, I think the middle needs to become the new black shape, the black triangle, which means that B is the answer, and C is not. I'm pretty confident of that. Right, 8. This is definitely one where I'm noticing some diagonal patterns, so I can see diagonally that inner shape is the same, but also the overall pattern is the same again, diagonally here. The inner pattern is the same, so I think if I focus then on the part, for example, that inner circle being black, and the continuation of that pattern, I'm expecting there to be a black circle in the middle here. And actually what's interesting, yeah, look, A, that's a black diamond, so that's not allowed. B, white circle, no. C, white diamond, no. D, white circle, no. Which means just by spotting that one feature of that inner shape needing to be black, I've eliminated all the options, and that was quite easy. So, again, really just shows the power of one by one, feature by feature, noticing something, eliminating, and sometimes like this one you'll get lucky, you'll notice one thing, that inner circle had to be black, and all the options got eliminated. And I can now move on, which is wonderful. Right, we've jumped ahead slightly to page 64. Let's go through these ones. So that looks to me as the arrows are the same, but they were pointing up, so now pointing down. So this one that was pointing down should now be pointing up. So I want an upward pointing arrow that's identical, and I think for me that looks as though it's B is my clear answer. And again, that's the one where it just jumps out, but you could always eliminate if you needed to. Well, these two Pac-Men look identical, so I want these two Pac-Men, I assume, to look identical, but obviously smaller. So that means it could be A, can't be B because it's not smaller, could be C, can't be D because it's in the wrong direction, can't be E because it's not smaller and the wrong direction. So the difference between A and C is this shading here. So let's just exaggerate it so it's easier to compare. So these are the two. Let's work out what's going on. So this one is that, this one is this. So I can see obviously they're flipping over. So if this one is pointing up to the top left, I want my new one to point up to the top right. So I think I want this type of shape, which is A, as my final answer, not C. And again, I really like this pattern, this way of just sort of focusing on the direction of the shapes, makes things a lot easier. Right, looking at 3, it seems as though we've got identical arrowheads, so these two show identical, so I can cross out A right at the start, but also the direction of the arrowhead seems to be the same, so I think anything that's not pointing to the top left I'm also going to eliminate. So that gets rid of these and leaves me with D and E. Again, if I ask myself what is different between D and E, it's the dotty line on the inside or the black line on the inside. Well, we can see here, this one had a black line on the inside and it swapped to be a dotty line on the inside, so I think they're swapping over. So if this one had a dotty line on the inside, I want my one to have a black line on the inside. So I think I want the answer option to be E, not D, for that very reason. And yeah, I think that's good. So this one's got the 2 lines and the 2 lines, 2 lines and the 1 lines. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about that. On now to number 4. Well, just looking at the overall shape of that outside box. Again, if I sort of gave it a direction, that shaded in squares pointing up, then pointing left, then pointing down. Well, that is rotating 90 degrees anti-clockwise. This one, again, down, right, up. That's also, as I go left to right, rotating. So I think I've spotted the pattern. If this circle, or this oval, excuse me, is pointing left, the next way it will be pointing is down. So I can draw that in, shade it in, add the dot, and now let's see which one that matches. Well, that actually looks as though A matches pretty much perfectly. And yeah, that's the wrong shape. That's not pointing in the right place. That's not pointing in the wrong place, and that's got the wrong colour and in the wrong place. Pretty confident about that one. Number 5. Well, I've noticed that these little corner pieces seem to be alternating back and forth. So top left, top right, and then top left again. So they seem to be swapping back and forth. So this one is going to be top right, top left, top right. So I can sketch that in right away. And that gets rid of B. Oh no, sorry, not B. It gets rid of, that's fine, that's fine. Oh, there's something very wrong about B. they've all got 3 circles. That just jumps out to me straight away. So go on, let's quickly get rid of the 2 circle one. That looks fine. D, though, goes. Oh, and actually also E goes, because that's got 4. Okay, so well, now I just have to ask myself, should I have any colourless circles or 1 black? Well, since all of them have got a black circle, I'm actually pretty confident to say that A is not the answer, just because it's supposed to have at least 1 black circle somewhere. Now, I'm sure we could work out that these black circles seem to be rotating how they shave. So this one, this one, this one is like a pattern. But actually, I think just again, by eliminating, we didn't even need to worry about that. C must be the answer, because it does, somewhere at least, have to have a black circle. Okay, number 6. Well, I'm noticing down this column, seems as though all the outer shading is identical. Down this column, all the outer shading is identical. So I think I need to have a fully black shape around the outside, so that gets rid of C and D right away. Also, it goes white, black, grey. White, black, grey, and I can see here a black and a white, so I think I'm missing a grey shape, which means I can eliminate A and E, which means B is the only option that's left, and it's the only one that's got the grey shape with the outer shape shaded correctly. And there's also, it does look to me as there's kind of a pattern of big circle, medium circle, small, but we didn't really need to think about that for B, just based on the shading alone. We could eliminate down to B. Right, number 7. Okay, well, we have got, again, some sort of diagonal pattern here, where look, that inner spoke seems to be the same across this diagonal. The inner plus is the same, so I think I want to have an inner just single line, which is the same, because that would keep the diagonal pattern going. Also, we've got 2, 4, 6 as we go from left to right. 2, 4, 6, 2 something 6. So I'm guessing we need to have 4 dots. So let's just start crossing out any that don't have 4 dots and don't have the spoke. Oh, well, that worked out quite nicely. Those were wrong because of the spokes. And then there's only one shape D that has actually got that inner 4 dots correctly. That was nice and easy. Looking here, we've got a full circle, which looks as though it's made up of the 2 halves. So I think this is one of those additive questions where the outer 2 shapes are being combined. So this plus this makes this whole thing. This plus this. So what's missing from this one to complete it? I think it's a circle here. So let's just eliminate what A is a full one. That's in the wrong place. That could be okay. That could be okay. E's got too much. And now I think I've just got to ask myself what needs to be that interior pattern. Well, it seems to be, is it 3, 4, 5 as we go up? Which would mean this should be 5, 6, 7. So that should be 4, 5, 6. And just to be really clear on what I'm counting, notice how these little star shapes, that's got 3, that's got 4 corners, that's got 5 corners. This one's got 5 corners, 6 corners, 7 corners. This one here has got 4 corners, 5 corners. So I'm expecting a star with 6 corners or 6 points. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, D has got the right number of corners, whereas C does not. So I think that's my answer. Right, everybody. That leads us to the end of the homework. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that was useful. I did go into a fair bit of detail, and that's something I will continue to do for this first, certainly for the first block when we're introducing new topics. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget there is a verbal reasoning video that you can watch that will go through the other half of the homework. Thank you for your time, everyone. Bye.